Finally, I will explain the last energy system of the body, the anaerobic energy system. This system uses fats, carbohydrates, and at times protein to resynthesize ATP for energy. This system is able to produce the most ATP of any of the systems, but is done slowly. So this system is more often used in long-distance, low-intensity sports, like the 5,000-meter run, after the other two systems have run out of ATP. After the first 10 seconds and 2 minutes, and isn't often used and wouldn't be used in sports like shot put, which involve one high-intensity burst of contractions. Even though this system can't produce ATP quickly, it can be done for almost an unlimited amount of time period. There are 3 main stages to this system, all of which rely on complex chemical reactions to produce ATP, which means it takes longer to resynthesize than the other two will. Those stages are aerobic glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain. Anaerobic glycolysis employs the same series of chemical reactions that the anaerobic glycolysis does. The only difference is there is sufficient oxygen to meet the demand. The reaction used is stores of glycogen are turned into glucose, which that glucose is then taken apart into its building blocks by a series of enzyme reactions. 2 ATP will now be used to give the reaction fuel. So 4 are made, meaning the body gains 2 ATP for muscular contractions. Pyruvate is the end product of the glucose's breakdown. Because oxygen is present, this is turned into the substance, acetyl coenzyme A. This can be formed in the second and third stage of the aerobic glycolysis, which can then make even more ATP. These stages continually break down the glucose that was started in aerobic glycolysis, which forms the byproducts CO2 and H2O, as well as synthesizing more ATP. These stages happen in the mitochondria, where most of the aerobic ATP is made. In the second stage of the aerobic glycolysis, acetyl coenzyme A is also produced via aerobic glycolysis. This stage is known as the Krebs cycle. The Krebs cycle. Fatty acids and amino acids then get converted to acetyl coenzyme A via chemical reactions. As well as this, acetyl from glycolysis then enters the Krebs cycle, which proceeds to break it down, giving out ATP as well as the byproducts H2 and CO2. Any hydrogen made in the Krebs cycle and glycolysis must be gotten rid of, as if it wasn't, cells would have too much acidity, causing the system to slow and become less efficient, meaning weaker contractions. To control this, the aerobic system fuses hydrogen and 2 enzymes, which is then taken to the electron chain, Its main function in the Krebs cycle is to create H2 to allow transportation to the electron transport chain, where it is, in commas, dealt with, so the acid levels are controlled and the system can make ATP. The steps of the Krebs cycle are: acetyl coenzyme A gets into the Krebs cycle. Acetyl coenzyme A is broken down and forms the byproducts CO2 and H2. Two new ATP are made in this process, which is available to allow muscular contractions. The H2 produced is taken to the electron transport chain. The next stage is the electron transport chain. This is the most complex and efficient way in the aerobic energy pathway in the aerobic energy system. It can create 34 molecules of ATP in every glucose molecule that is used. As soon as the electron transport chain has the H2 from the Krebs cycle, more reactions occur where they are fused with oxygen, which produces H2O. The process of taking the H2 ions from its original carrier molecules to O2 and then making the H2 ions cross over a chemical gradient. To summarize, the electron transport chain works like this. The H2 ions originally in the Krebs cycle are taken to the electron transport chain via carrier molecules. These are often proteins bound with non-protein groups. The transferred H2 ions are put in carrier molecules which are implanted in the electron transport chain. These are then put through a series of chemical reactions. After this, one H2 ion is made. When the H2 moves over the gradient, so another phosphate group is added. Finally, the byproduct created via this reaction, water, being that byproduct. The ATP the body can get from the breakdown of one glucose molecule in this system is: glycolysis gives out 2 ATP. The Krebs cycle gives out 2 ATP. The electron transport chain gives out 34 ATP. The total gained is 38 ATP. The aerobic system is used in sports like basketball. This system is used in basketball when a player is controlling the bounce of the basketball as they move up the field towards the opponent's hoop. This system is used here because plays can last longer than 2 minutes, when the body switches to this system to allow muscular contractions in the legs and arms and abdominal muscles. Hockey. This system would be used for around the last 15 minutes of each period, as the other two systems would have been used up. A specific play this system is used in is when a player shoots the ball to their person in the goal who passes it to a defender who takes it all the way up the field to the opposition goal, which might take over 2 minutes, meaning the body switches to the aerobic energy system to allow for contractions in the leg and arm muscles. Rowing. Since an Olympic rowing race is 2 kilometers, that would mean it would take over than 2 minutes to row that distance, meaning this energy system is used. It would be specifically used when the racers pull the oars towards their body to create the thrust. Running. This system would be used in long distance running, as that would take more than 2 minutes to complete. Which is when this system would kick in, so the leg muscles could continue contractions. Skiing. The typical men's international skiing length is 2.4 to 5 kilometers, which would take more than 2 minutes to complete. So the system is used to help the skiers balance and keep their legs bent by having the muscles contract. Football. This is used in football when a defending player goes to chase down an attacker, as the player could pass the ball to a teammate, so the defenders would have to move between the players. It may take more than 2 minutes for the defenders to get the ball back, meaning the aerobic energy system would be used to allow the leg muscles to contract to allow them to go after the ball to get it back. Swimming. An average triathlon swim is 3.9 kilometers, which on average takes people 40 minutes, which means this system would be used to allow contractions in people's arms and legs. I will now explain the advantages and disadvantages of this system. The amount of ATP that can be resynthesized has no real limit, as is able to produce 38 ATP for every molecule of glucose. The energy can be supplied for long periods of time. For example, most of the energy in a 500-meter run, all of the energy in a 500-meter run will come off. All of the energy in the 5,000-meter run will come from this system to allow muscular contractions after the first 2 minutes. No harmful byproducts are caused by the reaction, so the muscle's pH won't change, meaning less wear on them, so they can last longer at a higher intensity. The disadvantages are the system is slow to start resynthesizing in ATP because of the gap between when the O2 from the lungs can get to the contracting muscles, meaning the system doesn't have the capacity to produce large amounts of ATP quickly, like the ATP-PC system. Since the reactions are so complex, it means that it would take longer to synthesize the ATP, meaning the ATP can't get to the working muscles as quickly. So they tire and eventually build up lactic acid, start to break down, and the muscles can't contract as well, losing efficiency. The system doesn't have the capacity to work efficiently at high intensity again, due to the time gap between the oxygen getting from the lungs to the working muscles.